Took me a minute to figure it out.
All right.
Bunch of tech people in here.
Pushing all the buttons.
Oh, sorry, everyone on YouTube. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties.
We're live on YouTube.
Yeah, we're live. We're here. We're doing this.
We're here.
Okay. Penny, do you want to intro and then I'll intro the guests? Or yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everybody. We're here at No Code North, and we are a group of Canadians and friends from all around the world here to help people connect with Webflow and no-code tools and each other, and build a supportive community for Canadians and elsewhere. Anyway, as I'm
Canadian
off the
friends.
top of my head, Canadian friends. Oh, I like that. I like that. Can I take that? So anyway, today Maggie is going to lead our very first panel discussion. We try to offer as many different kinds of opportunities for people to connect with us and with our northern friends. And this is a new way for us to reach out to the experts within our community to learn from. So Maggie, take it away.
Yeah, so our first panel discussion, I thought we could talk about product building. There's been a lot of people actually around the space building lots of exciting things. I thought maybe we would talk to 3 people that have been doing that for a little bit longer, whether the products are in development or already launched, and kind of get their take. And this is actually a huge subject. We could be talking about this for 6 hours. So I thought maybe we could focus a little bit on the early stages, since you've gone through a bunch of bumps and things that you've overcome, and give a little bit of guidance to future founders on what things to avoid, what some of those bumps might be in the early stages. So let me just start quickly by introducing our guests, and then I'll let them introduce their products, because they'll do a better job than me. But we have Mason, Raymmar, and Nelson. Mason is the founder of and a managing partner at Edgar Allen, one of the biggest Webflow enterprise partner agencies. His unique perspective centers around storytelling, the core of all his projects. In recent years, he has been spending a part of the agency's focus on product building with 2 main products, Slater and more recently Wes. Random trivia, he's also big on running, if you want to ask him about that. Raymmar, if you've been using Webflow for a while, you've obviously seen Raymmar online. He's been involved with the community for a long time, spearheading big projects such as the Global Open House, State of Flow, and other tech meetups around Sarasota. For the past couple of years, he's been turning his love for community projects into product building for the tech community at large with the development of Atmos. And then Nelson, whether you've used Webflow for a long time or are just starting, you've definitely come across Nelson's videos during your learning phase. Nelson's also one of Webflow's earliest adopters. He's been creating tutorials for years. Through the different phases of his career, whether working at Webflow or on his own studio, that one couple, his main value is to help serve humans in a positive way. And his product in development, Ophelia, does just that. So I hope that it's just a small intro, and obviously there's a lot more to them. But I'm just going to let them talk now and tell you a little bit about their product before we get into product building in itself. So maybe we'll start with Raymmar, since you're first in the lodge. Do you wanna start?
Yeah. Thanks for that introduction. That was great. I'm trying to meet this Raymmar guy. So Atmos is a collaborative publishing tool. I've been building community and publishing tools kind of for a long time, in the last decade, let's say. And a big thing that I see happens is, like, lots of people use tools like social media to build their web presence, but the website stays a little static. And now with Webflow and some of these no-code tools, we have the ability to build these beautiful front ends, but we're still kind of building our online presence for other people, not like on web properties we own. And so Atmos is kind of trying to blend those 2 worlds. It's trying to take the power of community along with the power of web publishing, and try to blend those two things so that the community builds shared web assets that, again, build value over time. So instead of putting all the work of the community into something like a subreddit or a Facebook group or a Pinterest page or even a Circle website, which is web property that you don't own. If those platforms disappear, so does your community, so does your ability to access it. It's all over. Maybe you want to host that stuff inside of a Webflow site or inside of some other owned website. And so we're trying to build tools that allow creative teams to kind of take content and take the activity of their community and use that to build a web asset that they own, they can control, they can put an e-commerce store on it, they can attach it to their website. It could be their whole website. If you see the State of Flow website, we're using it to kind of power that. And so, yeah, it's a very ambitious goal. We're trying to fundamentally change the way communities work together to build value online. And we think that's a very important thing as we move forward into the next phase of the web.
Yeah, big program. That's amazing. I can't wait to see what that's going to turn into. And very excited to hear about the steps so far. How about you, Nelson? Do you want to talk a little bit about Ophelia?
Sure. And thank you so much for having me here. Really. So here's the pitch of Ophelia. All right. So Ophelia is a community-driven platform where creators support creators. So we all know that, when you start using Webflow, you start to love the power of it. But often you get stuck with unique problems during your project builds. Well, Ophelia is going to solve these problems by connecting creators, which is you, with vetted leaders in the Webflow community for fast, affordable one-on-one support. So when creators use the Ophelia platform, they'll get the exact help they need and grow their skills to launch successful websites. And best of all, it's all within a supportive community. So that's the pitch of Ophelia right there.
How about you, Mason? Thank you so much, Nelson.
Yeah, well, incredible to be here. I've been heads down, so I haven't seen quite a few people in a while. So Raymmar, good to see you. Maggie, good to see you. And just like everyone. And yeah, we've, as you said, kind of like we're an agency, and then we've been working in the enterprise space almost since day one. So one of our first projects with Webflow was actually for IHG on the Wi-Fi landing pages. We started building the Wi-Fi landing pages for like Intercontinental Hotel groups and Holiday Inn Express and like all these groups with Webflow. And at that point, I was just frustrated with AEM, Adobe Experience Manager, and I was like, there's got to be a better way. And so we started working Webflow. I was like, I'm just going to hand you the HTML. Like, I'm just tired of all these Jira tickets. And what the thing is that on the enterprise side, there's all of these blockers today, which is okay. And we have a buyer persona that we think about, and our buyer persona, their name is Bob, and they work in IT, and their full name is What About Bob. And so What About Bob comes to the call, and like the marketing team is excited about it, the brand team's excited about it, and What About Bob gets on is like, well, what about data residency, and what about blah blah blah, what about deployment, like all of these things that is really within their wheelhouse. So what we've been doing is building tools to unlock some of these really exciting but challenging deals. And so that's what we started with Wes. So Wes is a deployment tool that allows us to work in Webflow, but then still deploy out to these enterprise environments and start to integrate within these enterprise systems. So be that Azure, GitHub, S3, really anything that has an endpoint. We can also, we have another project we're working on where we're integrating in with a medical approval system so that you can work in Webflow and then deploy out individual pages for legal to go through and approve medical language that can then go back out into the world. We've been building it for 3 years. So the other thing with enterprise software is like, it's not flashy, right? So like, ooh, data residency, like who wants to get excited about data residency? When I was 6 years old, that's not what I thought I'd be getting excited about. But I think it's really cool because it starts to open up all these possibilities. And Slater was the same thing. So Slater was, hey, we built Let Her Run. There's so much opportunity. We love no code, but I think there's so much opportunity to actually code in Webflow. But we had to really beat our heads against the keyboard to make that happen. So after we finished that project, we were like, let's just go and build an IDE. or like a coding environment. And that was really led by Jared, and he kind of within a month had built it, and we're like, oh, this is pretty cool. And so we just started building it more and more, and really started to build it with, other builders in the Webflow community. And that's actually what I was talking with Nelson about a week ago or so. I was like, let's just got to get out there, build it with paying customers, and then see, have a vision, but how to be able to take it from there. And then most recently, our third product is called FigDam. So it allows us to work in Figma as a micro dam and then connect that to Webflow. Dam systems are digital asset management systems. They're very common within these larger organizations, but they're not that common within Webflow. So FigDam is actually a first pass at like how to be able to do this. And I think it's kind of addressing where the market is today, which is more of a mid-market. A lot of companies, you'd be surprised, like, a lot of big mid-market companies, which mid-market is kind of 500 million to $1 billion in revenue, which is big, right? But their marketing teams are small. It's a small marketing team, and they still have the same responsibilities as like a Fortune 500. So we wanted to be able to address where the market is today, which is a lot of people working in Figma, and then how to be able to kind of like update assets and update like everything from PDFs and sales materials. And if you have, let's say, promotional elements that might go in different blog posts, like, hey, download this ebook or whatever, you can go and update that in Figma and then have that auto pushed out to all of your Webflow pages. So we started on that about a month ago. I was actually going to record a video on what that looks like today. And we should be going into the App Store, like, fingers crossed, pretty soon. But that's what we've been working on, and excited to just be able to talk about the ups and downs. And yeah, like, it's tough. Like, we're not like, it's not easy, as I think everyone on this panel knows.
Yeah, I feel like you need to be very resilient. I'm sure the three of you have come to that conclusion. But yeah, before we go into the difficulties of it, I just want to start with a question from Virat about more the origin story and what has given you the push to because it's such a big endeavor. What has given you the push to one morning say, I'm building a product, I'm doing this? So let's go with the same order. Raymmar, like, how did you get started?
Yeah. I guess you'd have to go back to 2012 when I started tinkering with the internet and started building a blog in WordPress. And I started writing all the time and went viral. And I don't mean like, one post went viral. Like, we were driving millions of page views over like a year-long span every month. And it was pretty wild. But for like that first couple months, I didn't have any infrastructure for like how to monetize this or how to turn it into anything. And 2012 was very different, the web, than it is now. We're talking about a decade ago. So a lot of these tools didn't exist for how to monetize your web presence or how to like make your website interactive, right? It was just like you're serving this blog out there. And what I saw was all these big web companies were kind of taking that content and building a media company with like other people's content. This was like the Huffington Post heyday kind of thing. And they were driving a ton of ad revenue. My posts were featured on like medium.com and Business Insider and Huffington Post and Elite Daily and like all these crazy websites. But again, like me as the individual creator was not building anything other than like some links back to my website. And so I just started thinking about how do you improve and like build off of that. So I started building a product, but we used community building to launch that product. The product never actually took off, but the community stuff really did, right? Like the software team I was working with, software's really hard. So like the tech side of things didn't really take off back then, but I got really big into building community, and I saw like, oh, you can drive real change, real meaningful change, like in a local region. And then later online, as I got more involved in the Webflow community, I was like, you can do really big things by connecting people. The software is like a byproduct of that. And so then you just start realizing like most of these people that are building things on the internet are doing it on rented land. And if you know anything about like, building real value in the real world, it's about building assets you own. Right. And none of us own these social platforms that we publish on. We don't own Facebook. We don't own Twitter. We don't own any of these things. Instagram, Reddit, Pinterest, like we talked about at the beginning, Circle, any of these platforms, they're all just rented land. And so like, I don't know, in my head, I've just been mashing up this thing over time. This is my second time, actually. Atmos is like the second time I've tried to bring this thing to life because it's kind of an abstract idea. It's not like a very obvious problem we're trying to solve. Like everyone knows you need websites, but then they just assume you go out and use distribution channels that exist. And mostly we've allowed like the platforms to extract the value from all of those relationships that we're building digitally, right? And so the value of a network is the connections that we build. If you play in community, you know this, right? The value is this, what we're doing right now. It's the meaningful connections that we generate together. But we don't extract the value from those systems. In the digital world, Facebook extracts all that value through ad revenue, or some other platform extracts revenue through whatever their model is. And so in my mind, I just started thinking like there has to be ways for us as groups to use these tools to build stuff like this, but for the creators, for the networks themselves, for the communities themselves to extract the value. And I started seeing, again, even at FinSuite, like the stuff we were building and the community we were building and all the stuff we did in the Webflow space, and how that was really like creating a ton of value that was unquantifiable. You know, there's no way to quantify like the value of the connections either. And so Atmos is really just born out of trying to figure out how can we build an experimental playground that allows us to take some of what we see happening, some of this value add, and see if we can capitalize on it and find new ways to shift the incentive structures that kind of power the modern web. So we're not trying to change too much about how the web works. We're just trying to change how the incentives flow inside of that. And we think there's an interesting product to be had in that type of space, especially as we all get more comfortable with no-code tools and building on the web. And, you know, we don't want to be handcuffed by the front end or what this thing looks like. This is why we all love Webflows, because you can build whatever you want. And so as Webflow gets more powerful, pumping data, if you guys have heard me over the years, I've talked about this front end as a service that's coming. You know, this idea of basically build your front end here and who cares where the data lives? You're just gonna be able to display it and then create the interactive layer over top of that. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out how do you give people tools that feel just as easy to use as social media, but that deliver an end product that is as robust as a website could be and as technically complex as a website could be without even having to deal with that. You just go grab a website, pick a framework, pick a template, plug it into your existing website, and just invite the community to help you build out that web presence.
And give the people the power back to own their means of communication online.
Yeah.
Public communication.
We the people, we the creators, we've forgotten that,
Yeah.
you know? Like,
I feel like your spark is like the spark of the revolution.
Don't get me started. Property rights were a fundamental discovery in like the real world. And we have not discovered property rights in the digital world. Bitcoin is like the first attempt at that. Blockchain is like the first attempt at like digital property rights, sovereign digital property rights in an information-based world. And we have just started to see the beginning of that. And there will be a revolution that people start, they want to own it. Nobody wants to be owned. Nobody wants to like spend all this time investing in Facebook pages, for instance, and then have Facebook say, hey, thanks for building 1 million followers on this page. If you'd like to pay us to reach them, you know, you can do that. And now you're, you know, held at arm's length from your audience because they want to capitalize on your network. So I don't think people are going to keep doing this. You know, they're trying to step out of that type of cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how passionate you are about the subject. And like, that's the reason why I start with what sparked you to start this product, is because I feel like the stronger the spark, the longer you will go in building this thing, because it will get hard. And if you have that strong of a spark to begin with, you can go the distance. How about you, Nelson? I don't know, it's going to be hard to top that, but yeah, what sparked your product building journey?
I mean, I've always tried to create products, but really never knew how. But always in my heart, like, I want to help people. So, I mean, that's how everything I've done, from making Webflow tutorials to doing live streams, it was all just in service of my fellow Webflow community member. Just wanted to find a way to help. And so, like, after I left Webflow last August, I wanted to continue supporting the community in a more empathetic way by building my own platform. And I built the concept version of Ophelia by myself using no-code tools and launched it in 1 month. And over the next 2 months, it made $2,200 with zero marketing. And I wanted to keep it going, but doing it myself was a lot harder than I anticipated. And to add to that, I got an unexpected tax bill that caused my runway to fall short. So I decided to find a full-time job and was able to find one. However, a couple months later, I was part of a round of layoffs. I saw it coming, though, and I was feeling so much anxiety. But it was at that time I had 2 moments in my life that made me go all in on rebuilding Ophelia. One, my wife said, become the leader you wish you had. And Shane G, who's a great SEO webflower in the community, who was part of the first version of Ophelia, who asked, I liked Ophelia. Are you ever going to rebuild it? And now I'm doing both.
That's awesome. And I feel like the level of empathy that you have and that everybody knows that you have is that spark that will just keep you going on affiliate for a very long time, because it's such a big part of you that it's like, can't take that out of you. So yeah. How about you, Mason? What made you wake up one day and decide that you were going to start building products?
I don't know. It was really the formation of EA. So Edgar Allan was always started so that, around this idea of like, let's build products around stories. Like, people don't buy products, they buy the story behind the product. And that, I wanted to try to think of how to approach just product building through the lens of story, but also on our own runway. So, hey, I'm from Atlanta. There's not a big, VC world here. And if you have an idea, like, you just have to kind of bootstrap and make it happen. So the impetus is, let's build products for other people. I also believe in kind of taking laps, right? So just like practice, like I'm very determined, but like I was not an A student type of thing. And so just taking laps on things and getting better at building, products for their companies, or, even how to be able to market their products and things along those lines. That's what's given us our runway. And then how to be able to, build things that we're seeing. Like I go on runs and then I come back and I just have like, oh, we should go and build this. Like, I've got a whole series of things that I want to build and that we are building. And if anything, that's like, you can see my ADD in our product offerings. Like, I've got 3 products we're pushing right now, and they're all like kind of an enterprise offering. But what we're seeing is like how to be able to hedge our bets, how to be able to have kind of like these tiny products that we're building with customers. So building with customers means, like, even for our dam project, yesterday I sold that to a company so that they need to be able to have this internally. And we're building kind of a flavor of this. We're taking some of the stuff that we've built so that we can build something custom for them, but that's also helping to lead like where we're going to go with our features. Same thing for Wes. We've built that incrementally with different companies over the last 3 years. And I guess if I was to get to the why, so I haven't really talked about the why. It's just like, I just love building things, right? So that's it. Like, I just think that building is fun, and having an idea and sort of seeing that come to life in the world. And, product is the way that, that's the medium of my choice. Growing up, it was kind of like, doesn't matter what you can make, it's what you can sell. So I come from like kind of a sales background, and that like being able to sell things is part of the fun. So that's where, we've just been kind of making things, selling things, learning things, rinse and repeat.
Thanks, Mason. Yeah, and now that we kind of have an idea of what got the 3 of you started, I want to get into the core of this talk and talk about the early stages challenges. And this could go in so many directions. There's so many challenges between, like, from my little bit of research, product definition, testing, adoption, marketing, financing, talent discovery and retention, guidance for yourself. But I thought we could give future founders a little bit of guidance, and maybe each of you could talk about your biggest hurdle, just because if we talk about all of them, it's going to take a very long time, more than an hour. So yeah, maybe Raymmar, do you mind talking about one of your biggest hurdles so far and how you've overcome it, if you have, or if you're still figuring out how to overcome it?
We have not overcome our biggest hurdle, and that's like finding a true product market fit. We know that like we're building something that's valuable, but we don't really know how to articulate that value yet. We don't know how to package this up. Like the biggest challenge specifically is knowing like what we can do, but you know, everyone talks about you need to have that one sentence or you this one little thing, like explain it to me like I'm 5 or something like that, that they understand. And so finding a way to kind of talk about like what we're doing, you have to understand a little bit about SEO and marketing and web publishing and how to build media and you know the network effect and like I don't know. There's all these different things that you have to kind of like know to be a good marketer, a good online brand, a good whatever it is. And we're trying to encapsulate a lot of that. And so figuring out how do you package that, like how do you tell people like what is this so that they kind of they understand it, and then balancing that between like what does it do now versus what you know it'll do as you build the thing. I think that's you know one of the biggest challenges we're seeing and trying to figure out how to overcome right now.
Yeah, and you don't always know exactly how it's gonna evolve and get defined. So
And it changes so much too. It's like as you talk with people, as you see what resonates, as the product evolves, like it's constantly shifting. And this is why like you know going back to Webflow, why it becomes so easy, but also like this conflict where everyone wants this like beautiful amazing landing page that's you know like world class, but they don't understand that a lot of those companies went through iteration of iterations and 10 different versions before that. And then finally they're like, ta-da. And everyone sees that piece and you're like, oh, look how badass this is. But they changed the name. They changed everything. They got a new URL. They spent a ton of money on the rebrand. And they spent 3 years just kind of like stuttering through every part of that before, right? Like you look at the homepage of like Uber when they first launched, Airbnb, and it's like even those things were just totally gross, you know? So that's one of the things. Like you kind of have to just be out there, be a little ashamed of what you're doing, but take the reps, talk to as many people as possible, and then sell something, right? Like get people to use it so that you can like then start iterating. And as you start iterating, you start getting closer and closer to that. So that's kind of where we're at right now is we landed our first paying customer for an Atmos install last week. And we're going to start implementing and onboarding that. And we've kind of figured out how to like package it so small businesses or like these type of operations kind of get it a little bit. And so now we're excited to figure out like, okay, how can we build on top of that? So hopefully we're getting closer to that positioning thing, but we have definitely not overcome that. And that's the biggest challenge.
yeah, and then the financial part too is sometimes to help you with product definition, you do need to.
I don't want to talk about that because I'm gonna like.
Yeah,
That's
but
where I'll
like
get
yeah,
like-
hiring a company to help you with branding and definition would be helpful, but you don't.
And just
you're not
staying
always-
alive while you build, right?
Yeah.
Like just making sure that your lights stay on and that you can pay rent and you know like not being distracted by every little opportunity and just focusing and building the right thing too. You can chase, there's a million different ways you could chase when you start building something. You're like, ooh, this is cool, that cool, we could go this way and go that way, and next thing you know you've got like all these half-baked features and you spent 3 months. It's like, fuck, but what does this thing do? You know, so
Nelson, I feel like you're ready to chime in.
The what now?
You're ready to chime in, I could tell.
Oh no, I'm
ahead.
just well, as far as challenges go for Ophelia, I've been learning a ton about marketing, and I just spoke to good friend Mason about like contracts and legal stuff, like stuff that I really don't want to dive into, but I know I have to. And then like Raymmar said, fundraising, that is like a thing, and I'm also trying to keep the lights on and keep shelter and food and necessities for my family, and then the medical bills for my daughter who's on the autistic spectrum. So all of that like is just weighing on me, but I know that there is a future for this, and I have to just try because my heart just keeps pulling me in this direction to lead with empathy as much as possible, but create a product that is helpful for the people that I see that are asking for help. Another challenge is learning to organize a team. I've never considered myself a leader, but now that looking back in my career, I am one, and I have to embrace that and get that through my thick skull that I am a leader and just run this like the leader I want to be. And it's been so much fun to do that. Like, I don't know, when Ophelia becomes a thing and I'm starting to hire, Everyone in the company will get Steam Decks because we have to play video games. I don't know. That's just one of the things I wrote down in my vision doc. Like, we're gonna play video games. We're not gonna do work. Like, come on, let's let's just have fun. But the biggest challenge is patience, patience, and there's so many things you can't control, but the one thing you can control is yourself. And so just be patient and things will work out. And I guess for advice or overcoming obstacles, the best way to do market research, and I didn't even know I was doing market research until I started to come up with this idea, is to actually be in the market every day, meaning experience what your target audience is experiencing every day. You'll gain so much insight. And when I left Webflow and I experienced what freelancers are experiencing, it just shocked me and it made me super humble. And I'm like, I see what's going on now. If I had a tool that did this, I would use it. Okay, let's make it. And another advice I try to always tell people, and you know me, this is just from my heart: be kind. It is a form of bravery to just be kind and just lead with that kindness. And last advice is to pander to those you look up to. Yeah. So, yeah. Did that joke not go well? It's an Edgar Allan mug. God. Okay.
Yeah, because everyone's muted. Yeah, I once went to a wedding where they were doing this incredibly moving speech, but it was a pandemic wedding and everyone was online, and it was like tear jerking, but it was the most quiet, emotional speech I've ever seen, and everyone was clapping, and you couldn't hear anything. It was very awkward, but. That said, that's an incredibly good point, though. To be your market makes such a massive difference in your product, because you know all the pain points, you know how to develop properly. So yeah,
well, and a strong why.
Yeah,
like the how will come if you have a strong enough why. There's like a quote that I'm totally butchering in there, but something about like if your why is powerful enough, you can overcome any how or any what. And I think that's important too. I think like folks who just jump on an idea and they think like, I'm going to give this thing a month or two and see how it goes, and they don't have access, they don't get traction, and the next thing they're jumping to the next thing. Like, you kind of have to be invested in seeing the success of this thing and being willing to ride the ups and downs of it.
Yeah, there was speaking of quotes or things, is I think Raymmar, when you were talking, I was thinking about falling in love with the problem and not the solution. Like, sometimes you've got to be able to pivot in different places. And I just grabbed this. So thinking about, and Maggie had mentioned like, oh, all the obstacles, and like, one, it's like there's building a product and there's building a company, and those things are linked but different. It's one thing to build things, it's another thing to be able to build something where you're able to support your family and to be able to, like, our healthcare went up 100% this year as a company. Like, that's really hard and expensive. And we've actually had like, all right, so we've got 3 products that are rolling right now. That wasn't the first thing that, like, one of the first products that Edgar Allan built was actually it was a mattress. It was a bed in a box called Bob Walling. I'll throw the link in here. We've also built like retrospective cards. So here's a case study for it. And then I was like, I've been building stuff for a long time. This is like the first product that I built. It's called Mason's Old Time Debooter from 1987. So I went and made these in our garage, and then it's something you can take your boots off with. So you stand right here and you take your boots off. I grew up in Nashville, a lot of cowboy boots, right? And I went door to door, just like as a 6-year-old, just like knocking on doors and trying to sell these. Just get a lot of people are just like, I don't need a, so talking about trying to find product market fit, it's really difficult. And sometimes it's just like the determination, like I'm still waiting for, you know, like how to be able to get some stuff rolling. Like, getting a customer is one thing, and then kind of being able to be sustainable is another thing. Like our products today are, they're being funded by our services work, but our products are unlocking services work. So like that's, like last year we unlocked, it was like 1.6 million in services work based on Wes. I only throw that number out not to like flex or anything like that, to just be able to say like, you can look at ways of having something, because Wes, we've been building that for 3 years of product development. That and like, if you just look at that, you're like, oh my gosh, why did you spend your retirement on, like, why would you spend your savings on this? But what it's allowed us to do is like actually be more competitive in other areas and take on projects that we otherwise wouldn't be able to take on. And so that's how we were able to justify it. And sometimes, the other question I've heard is like, well, isn't Webflow just one day going to go and build this? And I've said for a long time, like, hey, you know what? A lot of products age like a banana, so it's like we can go in, take advantage of it today, make sure that like we're able to be, sustainable, but also understanding that like a lot of the stuff just, it's going to churn through, and what can we learn from it? What can we take away and be able to get better at? So for like the Loblolly product, I learned so much about go-to-market there, and the kind of how to be able to look at attribution between earned, owned, and paid channels. I learned about how to think about, integrating Shopify and going and doing, Google Analytics, and like all of the stuff that I'm able to talk with our customers about because I've lived through that. But, that was, I like all of those pictures that are on there, like, I was basically behind the camera sourcing them and trying to get friends and stuff along those lines to let me take a picture in their bedroom, which can sometimes be awkward, and like how to be able to style those and make them look, interesting. But yeah, I think it's just like that sort of determination and having that fire inside of you, and whether, it's like today it might be one thing, and then that might be, it might evolve into something else. But looking at like, what's that, the thing for me is I try to look at what's that overarching thesis. And I was talking with Nelson about the opportunity gap is like one of my theses. So the opportunity gap for me is that, these tools are going to create an exponential amount of opportunity, but business acumen only increases incrementally. And so it creates a gap between what you can do and what you know how to do. So how can we go through and address, to start to shrink that a little bit? A couple years ago, I don't know if you remember, but like one of our first like digital products was called Marina. So it was a contracting and estimation app. We learned so much in that, and really I had to put that on the sidelines because it wasn't going to make money fast enough. I still believe in it. I still believe that it's needed. I still believe that this is an area. And in fact, this year, what we're going to do is I wrote all these blog articles about like how to go through and think about this and what's the structure of an MSA. And so we're going to release that as a printed book this year. So it's going to be another product of, so it's called, the book is Minimum Business Acumen by the Jargonized Common Sense Company. So look for it.
That's such a good name.
But yeah, like, so, that's an example of like, hey, we couldn't build the other thing is like, I didn't want to go and get funding because I kind of like my treadmill, right? So I don't have a board of directors. It's challenging, and there's nothing to say there's anything wrong with going and getting funding. There's actually a lot of things that are right about it. It's just not an opportunity that necessarily we've had as a company, or something that I've wanted to push for. So anyway, but Maggie, that's my roundabout way of saying there's so many things, there's so many, dead ends that I think are just out there and stubbing your toe. But I think it's a thing you learn through experience and be able to take each one of those experiences to the next project or the next, part within whatever.
It's a lot of trial and error, but I find you're maybe in a different position where, because you have Edgar Allan, you do have some resources that allow you to maybe do some of those side projects and let them go for a bit, and then either come back to them or move on to another one, while other founders that don't have those resources kind of have to go all in. I just want to fit in a question quickly from Jeff on YouTube, who's asking, how do you know, whoops, I've lost it. There you go. How do you know when to transition from a solo builder to working with a team? And maybe Nelson, I'll ask you because you're in that process right now.
So the first version of Ophelia, I did it all by myself. I thought, okay, member stack, Airtable, Webflow, Stripe, and Make. Cool. I know these things. I don't know everything, but I'm going to learn it and make it happen. And I was able to make it happen. The easy part is launching. That is the most easy part of building a tool, building a business. It's so easy to build and launch. Maintaining it is a completely different thing. And getting it out there to the world to like say, hey, it's live, it's here, look at it, visit it, please interact it with it. That is a whole different game. And when I saw that people were actually using Ophelia, I thought, cool, that was it. I'm going to do it myself. I can do it easy. No. There's so much more to it. And that's when I realized, okay, this second version, I'm going to need more help. And the first person I went to was my wife. And I'm very lucky to have a wife who does graphic design, understands visual branding, and creating a brand from scratch. She understands that whole thing. So I went from solo to 2 people. And then I was lucky enough where she knows a friend who runs her own marketing strategy agency. And I said, okay, well, let me get them on board. Let me talk to them and see, how do I market this thing? I don't know the first thing of making a marketing strategy. And then the team just grew. And so that, to me, that's when I found out that, oh, I actually have a team. I can't just do all this stuff on my own. I need someone to help me with marketing. I need an advisor to help me figure out where to go with this, with my business strategy. I need a web designer, and I hired Carlos Sepulveda, a last speed build champion, to help me out with the marketing site design, because I don't have enough time to do that. And so the team just kept growing and growing when I knew I had a vision and I needed a team to help me execute it. Because if you're the leader who's always in the weeds, what I've learned is, if you're a leader that likes to do everything, like, no, I'm going to do the copy, I'm going to do the design, I'm going to do this, and you're not actually focused on the vision and helping to organize the team, then you're going to run out of time. And it's just not really a good place to be if you're a leader. You want to lead from the front, not the back.
Raymmar, how do you feel about that? Because you've always been working with Colleen, right? And how do you feel about that transition of working with more people?
Yeah, it's always hard to figure out how to delegate specific tasks on projects that are like kind of evolving in real time and require decision making kind of at root levels. And so people you bring on in that team, you have to trust and you have to kind of empower to go do those things. So my rule of thumb is really like, when you reach a point where you're just overwhelmed, or you don't have the time, or you need to free up time so that you can maybe go sell more or go chase something that's more of an opportunity cost than delegating off a piece of what you're trying to do. And so that's kind of been my rule of thumb, is like, when I was freelancing to bring in other people, it was always about like, can I handle this work, or do I need to bring someone in to handle this specific task? Or, oh, hey, I need animation, I got to find someone to do that because that's not my specialty. Or maybe I could do this design, but somebody could do it better in a third of the time. Okay, maybe I need to find someone to bring in from that part. So that's kind of, where that's how I balance, whether or not to grow or expand. The other thing is then you have to think about like the dynamics of building a team when you're going into startup phase. It's really easy, like Nelson said, to launch and get a bunch of people excited to like, hey, do you want to partner with me or whatever it is? And they're like, yeah. And next thing you know, everyone's excited. Week 1, week 2, month 1. Yeah. Month 2 is like, oh, where y'all at? Month 3, Slack channels are dead. And then you're like, what? And now maybe you gave these folks some equity or you told them some kind of deal you were going to promise them. And like now you got a bunch of people that are just dead weight on your project and figure out how to like get rid of them or replace them. And so it can also be very challenging if you bring in the team too early, or if you start thinking about like, let's bring a bunch of people in to fill roles and then maybe not be able to sustain the thing too. So yeah, there's so much to think about here. Like you could probably have a whole episode just on like that question.
Adoption, essentially.
What I would build on that is hiring is kind of like a last resort. And Nelson, I love the way that you went about launching and kind of just getting it out there. And you built it and it was kind of rubber bands and paper clips. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. Something that's difficult for people that maybe were, like I see this in teams sometimes, like if you're used to being like an A+ student, it can be really hard to be a D+ student. And I don't have that problem because I kind of like struggled through school and I was like always a D+ student. So getting just a good enough out there in the world is sometimes just that's how you're going to learn. The other thing I was thinking about is something that Grace had recently talked about around like how so much of running a business and freelance is about self-discovery, and it's about learning like what you're really good at, and then what you're not really good at. So, I love to write, but I'm a really bad speller and I struggle with grammar and stuff like that. So I've got great writers that I'm able to work with. And then, on the flip side, like even having specialists that can go and work in different things and work in different platforms. So there's, I think it's just having it's like the judicious approach of like, all right, well, this is going to get it across the line versus like, let's go and make the investment. And I need to recognize where my strength is and where my value is that I'm bringing to a project.
Yeah. And I think that becomes even more important as we get into the phase where like building the product's becoming easier and easier. There was a question included in the notes and stuff ahead of the talk about like, where's no code headed and, where do we see the industry kind of going? And I'm of the mindset of like this no code hype is essentially like been buried by the AI hype. And this idea of like, I wrote the code, AI wrote the code, it's no code, like nobody cares anymore. It's just, does the product work? And can you get people to like touch the product and see the product? And, so like building is becoming easier and easier. And we're getting to the place where if you have an idea, you can somehow bring it to life, even if it's a fake prototype, whatever it is, it's like getting the distribution, getting people excited about it, finding consistency, like Nelson said, not just getting the hype the first week of the launch and getting some viral traction because you have a big Twitter following, but actually delivering on that and getting those daily active users or the weekly active users or the monthly active users or people that are coming back to the product and actually getting value out of it. And then specifically, trying to generate some kind of value, whether that's traction or user growth or whatever signal you're measuring to like, gauge whether or not you're being successful. That becomes the real challenge at the end of the day, is like executing on this thing that you've now built or, birthed in your brain.
Thanks. So I think maybe because we're getting closer to the end of the hour, I just want to talk a little bit about what you think maybe, or what's the next hurdle you're working on? What's the next big thing that you're trying to get through, push through to continue the development of your product, each of you? And Raymmar, do you want to start maybe?
Sure. We are just kind of in the make it real phase. We've been experimenting with this thing internally. We've seen really good signals on our sites and properties and things that we're playing with. So it's like, we know we can do this. The question is, can we now do this for other people and have the same type of result? Or is it because, we're just really good at doing the thing we're doing and we're pretending that the software is doing a lot of the work? And so trying to figure out like, how to get more clients, how to validate some of this. And also, we are putting together a deck. We're not chasing VC money, but we would like to be prepared for the opportunity to go. We think there's an opportunity right now in this whole space that I don't want to say it's a small window, but there is a window here where, you know, everyone's kind of seeing Patreon and Substack and even things like OnlyFans and subscription services outside of member stack, Webflow, like all these things. People are starting to understand, like, hey, I should build and own some of the web. I should own my audience. So I think there's going to be some shift in that whole space. You see political tension, you see censorship, you see like misinformation, and you see institutional media kind of fading off with independent media really picking up. And so those folks are going to be looking for technology to do the things they're trying to do in the next couple years. So figuring out how to really take advantage of that in the next 18 months is going to be our key goal. Like the next 6 months is going to be real vital to, like, does this thing become something bigger? And so refining the website, getting it out in front of key people, and maybe finding like the 1 or 2 strategic partners that we think are going to help take this to the next level is really what the focus is. More so than money, we think the right relationships could open up the doors we need, because then we could validate this at a bigger scale than what we have right now, which will just create some compounding momentum for us. And that's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah, and I imagine just this process of constant networking and figuring out the right collaboration, the right people to talk to is probably quite a thing as well.
Well, and the interesting thing is that we're experimenting with local community too. So for a long time, I've been playing just with like online community, and online communities are great for doing things online. But a lot of us live in a local world where the things that happen around us matter, and very few of us are plugged in. Local media is dead in essence. It's very difficult to know like what's going on civically in your community, but there are core groups of people that kind of get involved in that stuff. And so we're trying to figure out like, how do you tap into that on a local level and take some of this digital community and blend it with like these real world communities? Because if you look at most of these like chambers of commerce or economic development corporations or any kind of industry associations, like they're very strong in the physical world, but they suck at the web. You know, they have like zero web presence. And if you were building those organizations today from the ground up, you would start thinking about how do you add value in a digital realm, you know, rather than like, how do you just build a good old boy network that's based on us being in, you know, closed room meetings that nobody else can attend. So how do you create the infrastructure for these next level of businesses to start collaborating in ways that just doesn't exist right now, so that they can, you know, build value? And I don't know. We're seeing a huge transition in the web, and I think it's going to be prolific how that ripples through everything we do, building on the web. I don't know, interacting with each other, just tons of things. I don't know. It's going to ripple through all of it.
iPost is so exciting because you can take it into so many different directions. There's so many layers to it. Nelson, what's the upcoming hurdle, or what are you going through right now? Next phase?
Well, the next phase is getting to QA, and then right after that, closed beta for my internal team and anyone else who wants to join in on this. So it's getting exciting. It's development phase is almost done. And I've been working with a Webflow alum software engineer that actually worked at Webflow for 6 years, and I can't wait to introduce her. And the whole marketing plan that's been set forth is so exciting to see. But as the days go on, I get more butterflies in my stomach and more nervous, because I'm like, oh my God, it's real. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Oh my God, why did I start this? I put myself in this mess. Okay, well, let's just go. Okay. So that's I guess my challenge now is getting over those fears and just letting it happen. And I have a wonderful supportive team, and more importantly, a wonderful supportive group of community members who I can talk to and just be real with. And I'm so thankful for that. And the support around this community is just so awesome. And just another idea I'm trying to do to help support you all back. So there's that.
I wonder if part of product building is a little bit like having kids. You're having kids. It's real. It's terrifying. But then they're also their own thing, and all you can do is kind of give it a direction and let it become what it's gonna be, and detach yourself a little bit. Will still be there the whole time, you know?
Yeah. It's this thing that you're creating. And also I gave it a name of Ophelia. And the reason why it's Ophelia is because I was looking for a name, and Ophelia means to help or to aid. And when I say Ophelia and I'm working on Ophelia, I have to remember to also give time to Jessica and Nova. And because I work from home, it's hard to split that time and split my mind from like, okay, stop thinking of Ophelia. Don't forget that you have Jessica and Nova right here. And so that's another huge challenge that I'm constantly working on. So, yeah.
Mason, how about you?
Gosh, I don't know. I think the hardest thing is either being too early or too late. And it's kind of like you're trying to ride this wave and time things just perfectly. And you know, Raymmar, I think you're so right on so many different things, and a lot of what, like even for West, like what we built there, the reason why we built that is around data residency. I think data is going to be the thing that, you know, you've heard about, you know, oh, data is the new oil and things along those lines. Now with AI, it's going to be even more important because people are going to be so protective of where their data sits and what people are doing with it and how it works, and you know, all of those types of things. But the challenge is like, okay, you've identified a problem. Now, how do you take that to market? How do you make sure? And again, even for West, like, you know, we 4 years ago, I recognized the need. And then 3 years ago, we started building it. And then just now we've been able to go out and be public and market. So I think it's like how to be able to time that just right, how to be able to look at, well, for me, it's kind of a crawl, walk, run approach. Like maybe your first customer isn't your last customer. You know, how to think about like what's a niche to be able to get into. Raymmar, as you were talking, something I was thinking about is intranets. And I think that's a huge opportunity. And as so many companies have gone virtual, and something we focused on a lot is how do you create community inside of a virtual company? And right now, all of that's being done in Slack. But you know, even if you're to go through and start to take a lot of what's happening in Slack and happening in like these other places and starting to knit those together in an interesting way. And I saw recently there's a company that's doing this called Spaces is/culture. And this is like, you know, I don't know what their tech is behind it or anything along those lines, but trying to think about like you have all these connections within a company, and how do you start to make, you know, a feeling and have that ambience, just as if you were to walk into an office and see, you know, there's a feeling that happens whenever you walk into an office, but looking from the outside in into these companies, it's hard to be able to gauge like, well, who are they really, and what do they really believe in, and what do they talk about, and what type of jokes do they tell, and you know, things along those lines. And so that was just something I was thinking about Raymmar as a potential like kind of micro community. It's like a group that, you know, has money and has a need, and it's a really specific audience. So anyway,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, but I think it's, you know, just trying to, the things I think about is just like how do I match up like what I'm building versus what a buyer is looking for, and where the market is, and like all of these things that pull you in different directions. And then still, you know, Nelson, as you were saying, spend time not just with, you know, Edgar Allan or Marina or Slater, but also, you know, our kids and like, you know, people that you love and just see out there in the world.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting stuff. Just to follow up on your intranet concept there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the local first environment and the kind of private web. The internet technology has gotten really good now, and there's some cool tech that's like creating everything local first. So basically the database is in the client, which means it's in your browser, means it's on your computer. So there's no central database. And then you can, like you were talking about these spaces. I don't know if it's what the website does or not. I pulled it up, but you can create a space where, like, let's say we could start daisy chaining our computers together, and literally the data is shared in between those computers and nowhere else. And so nobody even sees that data. Nobody knows what's passing. The network is the value. Like everything just lives inside that network. And then imagine plugging an LLM into that, where you can now query the shared data that's completely private. The LLM runs privately. This is not what that, there's a company called dxos.org, I think is what it is, that's doing some really cool stuff in this space. DXOS, yeah, dxos.org is doing some really cool stuff in this space. And this is one of the things where like, there's so much innovation happening in this space. And I think the web, like we're over the web is everywhere, be as big as possible. Now, I think everything's going to just get shrunk down, localized, especially as you start seeing people try to protect their data and protect the intellectual property they generate, but not just as individuals, as collective groups. But they still need to output that, and they still need to access that and do things with that. And that's, yeah, that intranet concept, that shared data spaces concept is very interesting, I think, over the next couple of years.
Yep.
Obsidian, if you're familiar with like Obsidian, that's all like a local first note-taking app, huge. Those types of products are really, really starting to gain traction.
Building on this timing subject a little bit, Patrick was saying it's a question for everyone, but there's more, and we were talking about that already a little bit. There's more competition in this space than ever before right now. How do you find a balance between launching a product that may not be ready yet, while also not waiting too long and missing the opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's that catching the wave thing. Too early, too late. That's the challenge.
It's the same as wrong.
Yep. Yeah.
Because you have to take the risk. You have to take your best guess, educated guess, but some companies have had earlier competitions that were doing the exact same thing and were only successful because of exactly when they launched. I think YouTube is one of them, right? There's other companies that were doing that, but because of the technology at the time that YouTube launched, it made it, because the ones that did the exact same thing before, the technology just wasn't ready yet.
Yeah. The other thing I think probably is useful to say here is that you don't need to build the next billion-dollar unicorn. Like everyone's out there trying to build like the next Google or Facebook or whatever it is, right? Where it's like, okay, that's cool, but also probably next to impossible. Or you could build something that builds a ton of value and build a $5 million company, a $10 million company, a $100 million company. Like, I don't understand why people in the tech world like scoff their nose at those type of successes. It's like, I don't know, it seems pretty ideal to me to have a self-sustaining piece of software, a robust community, to be able to offer good back to the space. And so like, I think it also depends on the scale or what you're building, especially in the no-code space. Like, it makes sense to build software for 500 people now, right? Like with these tools, like it never made sense to build software for 100 people or 1,000 people or 500. Like, it's never made sense because the infrastructure and the work required to develop it and to host it and to manage it and keep it secure. But now, like Nelson was saying, you know, I've seen big acquisitions, companies built, you know, sold for millions and millions of dollars that were built on the same stack Nelson was talking about, MemberStack, Wiz, Integromat, you know, a little bit of Zapier or whatever it is. And so I think, yeah, you don't have to, like, if you have a big vision for something, that's okay to shoot for. But I think, you know, launching something can just be starting to iterate, like we talked about. And you see people like launch a little something, experiment with it, shape it, mold it, turn it into something. And who knows, you know, 6 months, a year down the road, you might have something more specific. But that iterative process, that kind of trying things along the way, like that's that build in public movement. I don't know, you know, like there's arguments about whether or not that's still alive or not, but or the value's still there based on the algorithms. But I don't know. Just that you can't beat that agile iterative process.
I think that's also sort of part of that whole, you know, coming to market is, you think about something like Netscape. Those of you who are old enough to remember Netscape, right? It disappeared because it didn't keep up as the market changed, as new products came along, and, you know, probably because they got kind of pushed out by big guys that kind of ran the whole system. But, you know, it's like, if you're early, watch who comes next and adapt and
That's a good point.
stay with it.
Now, before we go and before the closing remarks, do we have any more questions from people in the lodge? Maybe I know there's a few people here building products. Manuel, do you want to go, or Virat?
Yeah, I could go. So Raymmar, like you mentioned about like building in the public, what I see, like if there are companies who are basically building some product, basically they are releasing in public. There are only a solo entrepreneurs or the indie hackers that we are calling, like they are basically doing this building in public. What I feel in the community, like we have a very good community, and like all people are very positive around. So like when you are sharing something like, okay, I'm building something, everyone basically, what I personally feel is like hyping around each other, like, okay, you are building, you are doing good, instead of giving there are very few people who give genuine feedback, it's going to work or not. And what basically happens to those indie developers or indie hackers, like they basically uh, ride on those hype and basically feels good that it's going to work, it's going to end. Like once they launch, they basically says their sales basically goes down, no one is basically buying those things or something like that. So what do you think, like uh, building in public is good or just releasing in public is good?
I'm a big fan of sharing your work as you build. I'm not a big fan of the share your financial stats and brag about how much money you make and show your income statements and stuff. I think that's kind of toxic. But I do like, for instance, the TL Draw folks. I don't know if you know Steve Ruiz, and they're always sharing like tinkering and experiments and there's a bunch of people in the Webflow space that do this really well, where they're like, oh, hey, look at this little thing I just built. So it's like showing your work, and you kind of need to do that. You need to show off a little bit. You need to kind of show people what you're doing, and so there's this balance between like revealing your strategy publicly and kind of exposing yourself versus giving people things to keep them interested or build on the story, like Mason was talking about, that helps them say like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't realize this is what was going on here. And so you kind of need to like constantly do that. So there's always the balance of like how much is too much, building silently and then having a big launch versus kind of teasing it along the way and stuff. That it would have to kind of depend on the project and what you're really trying to accomplish, I think. But I'm not, I don't know. There's pros and cons on both sides. I don't think there's like a cut and dry, this is the perfect strategy, do it like this. I think we also have a little bias like that, survivorship bias. You see somebody that was successful and that was their strategy, and then they're giving advice, this is how I did it, and so you go do exactly that when it's not really what you need to be doing. You need to be kind of doing a totally different thing, but you're just following these folks online because they already made it, they already got tons of followers, and you're like, I got to be doing that. And then you get distracted just chasing those little things instead of like focusing and just going after what you need to do, and then figuring out how to like bring some of their, maybe some of their advice is relevant, but not all of it.
Yeah, makes sense.
I agree with that, Raymmar. And now it makes me think of like, I always think about family. I always think about humans, and like try to have some sort of analogy about everything to make it make sense in my childlike mind. And so I'm like, growing Ophelia or growing a product, it's like growing your own kid. This is something that comes from the heart, and you want to show off to the world. You can look up and read all the parenting books in the world, parenting blogs, and not one of them are going to have the exact answer for your kid. Like, how do I grow this child? No, but you take it all, and you have to figure it out on your own and make your own path. So you can get words of advice from here and there and everywhere, but it's all up to you how you want to do it. And yeah, like Raymmar said, it's not black and white. The whole world is gray. It's all these gradients, and so just embrace that. And in my mind, it's help one person a day. And I've said this in Flow Walkers. I've said this in many streams. Just help one person. and you'll learn so much from that one interaction that'll get you to the next person that you want to help, which gets you next person. And hey, you know what? One of those people might start spreading another ripple of helping someone else, and you can learn from them. How was that experience? How did that work out? Let me learn from that and then put that into your product. So you are kind of building in public, but kind of not. So yeah.
I want to build on the baby analogy and say, like, you don't post all the pictures you take of your baby online, okay?
Yeah, there it is.
There's the building in public analogy. It's like you probably take lots of pictures of your baby, but you don't post all of them online, right? So just be real careful about the pictures you post of your baby on the internet early in life.
Here's my kid with the first Hello World. Here's my kid with a Hello World and a button. Oh my God, isn't it amazing? Yeah, okay, we get it.
There's such a thing as too much. Hey guys, just quickly before we go, Manuel has an awesome product, and if he has a question, I just want to make sure that there's a bit of room for him too, because I've been using Flow Drive and it's awesome. Manuel, do you have any questions?
Not really. I joined it late. But actually, like Virat's question regarding building public, this is something I've been doing for like close to 2 years now. I would say there's some stuff definitely that like helped me while building Flow scripts and as well as Flow Drive, and also building something new, Flow Proxy, which is like reverse proxy, or also like securing API and Webflow. I'm still getting feedback, to be honest, so that's why you haven't really seen it out there. I've shared it with Virat, some other Webflow designers like Tim, and some other people too as well. But yeah, I wanted to check out Flow Drive. Right, it's an awesome tool, and currently with like surpassed 500k requests, mostly videos, which is weird, right? Mostly videos. But yeah, thank you.
But that's the thing, right? Like you see how your product evolves and you kind of adapt, and it's not always going in the direction that you thought it would, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I built Flow Drive basically for like a client because I was working on a web app, so we wanted them to submit file from Webflow form, right? So I built it as specifically for that. But upon releasing it like to public, I realized that there's actually more problem. Like you can't really upload videos. So like most of the users using it are just using it for like uploading videos, audios. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're quite a bit over now, so I think maybe if anyone's interested, maybe another time we could just have another conversation about that. We could have another 20 conversations about that. But it might be maybe in 6 months or a year. It could be kind of cool to do another one and see the evolution. But in the meantime, I just wanted to go over a couple of quotes from our guests that are a little bit more high level of what we've talked about, but I thought were really good. The first one is use product building as a tool for self-discovery about where your strengths and values are, and bring that into the process, kind of like a loop. I thought that was interesting. And then it's got the two, double use as well. A strong why will carry you through the hurdles. Very good point. I really liked that Nelson talked about be your market. I think that's such a strong point as well. If you're in such a better position to figure out the pain points if you are your own market. And then a couple more, make your own definition of success. It's true in life, and it's true probably in product building. I think you're happier if you make your own definition of success, and it doesn't have to be the best product or the best person out there. You will probably end up not successful and unhappy. And then last, be kind and help one person a day. It's just such a nice way to end this conversation. Definitely stolen from Nelson. Thank you so much for coming to the stream. And I don't have them lined up. I'm so sorry. But we will add all the links to our guests' products and information in the comments of this stream. But yeah, so that you can follow the evolution of their products. And yeah,
Yeah,
Penny, do you want to say something before we go? Oh, go ahead, Manuel.
yeah. A quick question: is there a newsletter? Because I sometimes miss this. So
Oh,
is there like a newsletter?
Oh, well, I have a little wrap up here that will include that. So thank you all for joining us. Everybody who joined us here in the lodge, everybody who joined us on YouTube, and everybody who's going to watch this again afterwards. I think this is a great conversation and a lot to dig into and go back over. Please make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel, because we're here a lot and growing. We are No Code North. Go to nocodenorth.com and you can sign up for our newsletter there. And we send out a weekly list of things that are coming up, and then a reminder on Fridays, because our events are held on Fridays pretty much every week. Here in the lodge, which is our very cool gather space that Maggie created for us, here we have workshops and discussions like this. And we also have hangouts from time to time. Monthly, we do our Northern Showcase, which features Canadian talent in the Webflow and no-code world. So next up, next Friday, June 7th, Maggie will be hosting our French hangout, because here in Canada, we are bilingual, or at least some of us are. June 14th, join us for the Northern Showcase featuring James Wagner and Logan Hawkins of the Bold Bureau. And on June 21st, we are excited that WebBay, Keegan Leary, is going to be able to join us, and he's got a really interesting topic for his workshop called Is Webflow the Ultimate Tool for Full Stack Development? So don't miss that one, and we'd love to see you all back as often as possible. And other than that, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you real soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.